Welcome to Young Asia Television, Minister Dinesh Gunawardena, Minister for Urban Development and Sacred Areas Development. I'm going to begin by talking to you about the election, which is the biggest event on the agenda for us as Sri Lankans today. Let me start straight away with the campaign. We're just days into the days leading up to the final election day. How do you feel about it at this moment?
Fairly confident, but very active and heated up campaign has taken the elections this time, with a lot of competition. A lot of new inputs are coming. Sometimes the election laws being violated, still having an easy go. I have been concentrating on a more, I would say, a better dialogue with the people for a long time. Therefore, I do not have to get onto unnecessary propaganda. Elections have become a very important event in this era because Parliament will play an important role in our country's development as well as the political process. Parliament has certain powers which cannot be taken over by any other position of the Constitution. Say even the President has to get approval of Parliament for all financial, legislative and other aspects of governance.
So it's an important event for us as a nation because it's going to really decide what happens to us. Just going into this whole competition that you talked about, I think this time round, far more than any other time, we're seeing a very intense competition where there are a number of candidates vying for a limited number of seats. Take the Colombo district where you are standing for election. There are some 19 seats,
19.
I believe, and hundreds of candidates. What does this mean? I mean, how does this how do we make sure that the best candidates actually win? Because if it's in the end down to the kind of publicity you can get and the propaganda you can generate, or isn't it?
I think the people are also fairly educated enough politically, and they have been able to decide who their representatives should be, who the best representative should be. It is not only money and propaganda that can influence the voter. Voter has much to decide on their issues, their own issues, country's issues. Therefore, all this propaganda and excess violations have come because of the elections process system. I have been advocating a change in the present election system. That is what we stand for. The PR and the preferences voting system should be changed to, and we should have a system which would bring in the first past the post, where the voters would have their member of parliament. The member of parliament would have an area which is manageable to represent, and a mixture of the PR which would bring also a certain amount of stability and representation. So our system has now exhausted itself. This is what the election system has brought us to.
Time for change.
Time for change.
And until then, we have to hope that the people will vote wisely and see beyond, as you say, just the glitz and the glitter, and really look to see who they should be voting for. I mean, you come from a family of politicians. Your father is well-known politician, Philip Gunawardena. When you entered politics, it must have been the politics you know as a child as well as when you entered politics. It's a completely different situation today, isn't it?
I fully agree.
Tell me, what are the biggest differences?
Fully agree, because we have gone through the political process as little kids, the young days. Both my father and mother both were in politics. Both represented their electorates in Parliament. They had very little time for us, more time for the people. But it was a different election system where people were participating. The battle among political parties was not like this. The more democratically honorable people were entering politics because they wanted to serve the country. I think politics have slowly degenerated. It is time for the people of our country to send men and women who could deliver, who could protect their honor and respect in terms of representation. This is the difference I see among the former leaders of our country and today.
So what you're talking about is this concept of principled politics.
Principle, dedication, sacrifice, all that counts to a nation.
I think I've heard you described as a principled politician in the past. Do you see yourself as one? Or
Very much I've been trying. I've been always holding to key principles that I have stood for when I entered Parliament 30 years ago. And today, still some of those principles I have adhered to. They have not become obstacle to my politics in the country, as well as some of it has been now accepted by those who rejected it earlier.
I was going to say, is it possible to still practice principled politics in the face of an environment where perhaps things are not so principled?
No, we have gone through a difficult time also, where the conflict in the north did have an effect on our society. Laws in the country had to be certainly sometimes suspended because of the seriousness of the conflict. Therefore, society had gone through a lot of difficult times. The revolt of the youth, the JVP uprising, all that. So in this period, a lot of things have collapsed. There have been many changes in society without a proper perspective. Today, I think through this years, as the Northeast conflict has been brought to an end, there is more hope for principled politics, people who would dedicate themselves to work for the people and have a better governance and dialogue with their own people in terms of what people want and how what can be delivered. This is the perspective that we should see.
You have moved from being a politician who has been associated with left parties and left ideas to a more national thinking party. And as you mentioned just now, we have gone through the time of conflict where minority communities have been involved. How do you think that the present politics, the political parties that exist, will in fact look after the interests of the minorities in a way that we will not see a repetition of what we have in our history?
That is all what we all are dedicated towards. The declared policies of the government also has been very clear that there would be a redevelopment, and the process of development will be faster growth for the country, where all would enjoy the growth of our economy, for which north and east as well as other parts of the country all will be brought in, rather than development in only selected areas. This is one issue. Secondly, the acceptance of Sri Lankan society, which has all communities.
Yeah.
But our fundamental rights are very strong. I would say our fundamental rights enshrined in the Constitution is very strong, where anyone could challenge the violation of their fundamental rights. And the acceptance of, in the development process, the acceptance of representatives of all areas, all communities. This is a key factor. And we plan to establish more, give more strength to the committee system in Parliament, which will bring in members of the opposition, members of the minorities, all to play a role. This is the vision of His Excellency the President, as he has declared. This will bring in more consultation and consensus in terms of issues, as well as development decisions which are the most important in terms of any community.
I quite agree. And moving into the north and the east and the former affected areas, and improving on development projects and re-establishing the infrastructure, these are very important. And there does seem to be the will on the part of the government to actually go ahead with these things. But let me ask you another question. I mean, this is a community that has, the minority communities have been through quite a lot over the last few years. Do you think we as a peoples, but also specifically you as a government, is doing enough in terms of reaching out to the hearts and minds of these people? I mean, do you think it is enough that is being done in terms of trying to deal with the reconciliation that must surely be addressed?
Yeah, I think the first attempt is to restore law and order, restore democratic process and institutions, where they all could play a role. And the government has been able to hold elections, allow many representatives of their on areas, on communities to come into the democratic process. The North, the East, all